trajectory.
Rachel Maskell.
Mr Speaker, disabled people's access was a condition of planning to open up the planning for the York Central development. However, I'm hearing that it's going to be bypassed and the planning will go ahead without putting disabled access on, which will clearly impede disabled people. So can we ensure that that difficult engineering work is undertaken before that planning is granted?
Accessibility to all our transport modes is extremely important to this government. I'll be delighted to meet with my honourable friend to discuss this matter further.
Will Foster.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Despite my constituency of Woking only being a stone's throw away from Heathrow, we have no direct rail link to the country's busiest airport. Last week, Heathrow Southern Railway applied to the government for a business case for these plans. When will the government consider that to ensure my constituents can get a train to Heathrow?
As well as the question of how many planes take off and land at Heathrow, the question of how people get to the airport is absolutely critical. So he makes an important point and I'd be happy to discuss it further with him.
Murphy.
Learner drivers in Basingstoke have been left stranded for months and in some cases years unable to book a driving test. It's affecting their jobs, education and the local economy. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that urgent action is needed to extend test centre hours, ramp up the recruitment of examiners and also to clamp down on the rip-off companies booking multiple slots only to flog them at higher prices?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise his concerns on behalf of learner drivers. On the 18th of December, DVSA set out a 7-point plan which recognises the need to fix the driving test booking system and get new drivers on the road, and I'll be holding them to account for delivering on that plan and the changes that he and his constituents need to see.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When the previous government cancelled HS2, they promised over £4 billion of project money for projects in the North and Midlands. I wondered if the government still planned to deliver on that and when we should expect to see that money in the North.
I hate to tell the honourable gentleman, but it was fantasy money. We're working through a pipeline of transport infrastructure projects and we'll be making announcements alongside the outcome of the spending review.
Josh Dean.
The long-promised Platform 1 lift at Hertford North Station, due to be delivered under the Access for All scheme, has been delayed yet again, leaving some of my disabled constituents travelling back up the line, getting a different train to Platform 2 so they can use the lift there. Will the appropriate minister meet with me to discuss how we can urgently drive this lift project forward for my constituents?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise concerns about disabled access at his local station. We want to ensure that everyone is able to access our public transport networks, and I would be happy to ensure that I or one of my colleagues meets with him.
Jim Dixon.
Mr Speaker, on the economic growth we've been discussing, I wonder if the Secretary of State could clarify, for the benefit of the party opposite, that economic growth depends on rather more than a well-oiled revolving door between the Tory party and big business, a door through which the former Tory Transport Minister and current member of the other place unsuccessfully attempted to walk last week.
Delivering economic growth requires a proper plan to be investing in our transport infrastructure, and that's exactly what this government is determined to deliver.
Okay. Lawrence Turner.
Mr Speaker, once Birmingham's Camp Hill line reopens, we will need track investment if we are to restore the pre-pandemic service frequencies on the cross-city line, including to Northfield and Longbridge. So will the Minister look in full at the case for upgrading Kings Norton Station?
I know my honourable friend is an assiduous and informed campaigner for improved rail schemes for his constituents. He will know that funding for the Midlands Rail Hub includes designs for the reinstatement of the island platforms at Kings Norton, and whilst decisions still need to be taken on future investment, I know he will be pushing for construction to start as soon as possible.
Josh Fenton-Glenn.
Mr Speaker, the Calder Valley line was listed as a top priority for improvements by Transport for the North's Electrification Task Force 10 years ago, back in 2015. Yet my constituents are still waiting. Will the Minister commit to this government delivering the infrastructure that the last government couldn't for my constituents?
Network Rail are currently completing a strategic outline business case covering electrification of the Calder Valley line. The business case will be considered within the context of the wider electrification strategy to determine how we deliver the best possible benefits across the region.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next month, railway enthusiasts from around the world will be coming to my constituency as we mark the 200th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway, which took off from the town of Shildon. So will the Right Honourable Lady ask the Railway Minister to meet with myself and other MPs along that route to talk about how the government can be part of those celebrations?
I am sure that will be an invitation that the Rail Minister couldn't possibly refuse.
And on that basis, I look forward to a minister opening at the Coppell railway station, or at least doing the impact study on the main line. Right, let us now come to the urgent question. Let the front benches change over. Let us come to the urgent question. Shall the Secretary of State for Defence, James Cartledge?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Defence if he will make a statement on Ukraine.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday at the Ukraine Defence Contact Group chaired by the Defence Secretary, we saw almost 50 nations and partners standing together. Ukraine is backed by the members of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group and backed by billions of dollars worth of arms and ammunition, committed to keep their warfighters equipped. This will increase pressure on Putin to help force him to the table and bring a sustainable peace closer. We were pleased that Secretary Hegseth confirmed the US's continued commitment to this group, to Ukraine's pursuit of what he called a durable peace, and the importance of security guarantees. We heard his call for European nations to step up. Well, Mr. Speaker, we are and we will. NATO allies pledged €40 billion in 2024 and went on to provide €50 billion. The majority of that came from European nations, while non-US NATO allies boosted wider defence spending by 20% in just the last year. So Europe is stepping up. Finally, we saw a clear commitment to ratchet up the pressure on Putin with both military and economic tools. We all agree that 2025 will be the critical year for Ukraine. At this crucial moment, we will not step back, but step up our support to Ukraine. President Trump and President Zelensky have both spoken of their desire to achieve peace through strength. The commitments made yesterday provide the collective strength we need to achieve peace. For our part, the UK will spend £4.5 billion on military support for Ukraine this year, more than ever before. We've now provided over 500,000 artillery shells worth over £1.5 billion. Yesterday, the Defence Secretary announced we will provide an additional £150 million of new firepower, including drones, tanks and air-to-air missiles. Ukraine's security matters to global security. It's why the vital UDCG coalition of 50 nations and partners stretches from the Indo-Pacific to South America. Because this war was never about the fate of just one nation. When the border of one country is redrawn by force, it undermines the security of all nations. The US is serious about stability in the Indo-Pacific, as are we. That's why the Prime Minister announced that the Carrier Strike Group will go there next year. If aggression goes unchecked on one continent, it emboldens regimes on another. So, on stepping up for Ukraine, we are and we will. On stepping up for European security, we are and we will.
James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to you for granting the UQ, given that we are in recess next week and the day we return will be the 3rd anniversary of Putin's unprovoked illegal invasion of Ukraine. In the 3 years since, Russia has inflicted unimaginable levels of suffering on Ukraine, with military and civilian loss of life on a vast scale, and at the hands of a dictator oblivious to such consequences and only too willing to sacrifice his own soldiers to the meat grinder. In the face of so many casualties and so much pain, of course, we all want to see peace. We all want the senseless slaughter to stop and Ukraine once again able to thrive and enjoy the trappings of peace and prosperity that we all take for granted. It is also clear that an end to this suffering is a goal that President Trump wishes to achieve rapidly, as he set out to the American people before securing their support and his second mandate for the White House. But, Mr. Speaker, we remain 100% steadfast in our support for Ukraine and our backing for the government in delivering that, as they did when in opposition, and we agree in principle with them that, as we also stressed repeatedly in government, it is for the Ukrainians to decide the timing and terms of any negotiations on ending the war. So does the Minister agree that negotiations without the direct involvement of Ukraine would be unthinkable? What more can the Minister say about how they will work with allies to ensure that any negotiations are driven by the primacy of Ukraine's needs, not least given its status as the democratic nation invaded without provocation by a dictator? Of course, Mr. Speaker, we welcome the news from the Minister about the commitments given by other European NATO nations this week, but is it not the case that President Trump has been right to consistently highlight the way some NATO nations spend far below what is expected and required on defence? And can the Minister assure the House that through every possible lever at their disposal, the government will be reminding all NATO members that if Putin is seen to somehow win from any settlement, that may bring a temporary end to the conflict, but it will not make the world a safer place. Far from it. This would be an illusion of peace, likely to send a very dangerous signal to other potential adversaries. Yeah. Of course, the position expressed, Mr. Speaker, by both the US President and his Defence Secretary yesterday carries huge implications for our own defence policy. They've made it abundantly clear the US will play no role in any future peacekeeping effort in Ukraine, should that be necessary. So while the government will, of course, be cautious to contemplate publicly the implications of this, isn't the key point straightforward, Mr. Speaker? If higher defence spending was urgent before, it is now critical.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome the fact that there still is a consensus across this House in the main for supporting Ukraine. I think that's been a tremendously important part of the support we've been able to give over the previous 3 years and before to the Ukrainians. The Honourable Gentleman said that there shouldn't be negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine, and my right honourable friend, the Defence Secretary, has made that clear in his remarks yesterday. NATO's job is to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position for any talks, but there can be no negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine being involved. So we want to see a durable peace and no return to conflict and aggression. That's the only way in which this war can end with the kind of security that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have referred to.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are all conscious of this third-year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine, and of course our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine at this time. However, there can be no peace without justice, and therefore it is welcome that countries are collaborating to try and bring a de-escalation of the war. But can she say what they're doing to focus on the justice system to ensure that war criminals are tried and justice is brought to the Ukrainian people?
Minister.
My honourable friend makes an important point, and we have always said that this has to be a just peace, and that those who've committed war crimes during this invasion of Ukraine need to be pursued for it.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Jason McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the leader of my party warned the Prime Minister that we might be facing the worst betrayal of a European ally since Poland in 1945. The hours since have confirmed our fears. This is a moment of great peril for us all. Does the Minister agree with me that the US's actions are a betrayal of our Ukrainian friends who have fought so hard for their freedom, and of the UK and of all of our European allies as well? Will the government step up and show British leadership, starting by passing urgent legislation to seize the frozen Russian assets so we can support Ukraine, whatever the US does? And clearly, in light of the events of the past 24 hours, the government needs to look again at defence spending. Does she agree with me that the decision of the previous government to continue with the cut to the army of 10,000 troops at a time when war is raging on our continent now looks utterly unforgivable?
Well, I don't accept what the Honourable Gentleman said about being betrayed by our allies. The US Secretary for Defence has made it clear that he wants a durable peace, and that is what he and the President are proceeding to try and obtain, so I don't accept that point. In terms of our own forces, we are seeking to make sure that recruitment, which has failed over the last number of years to meet the targets that have been set for it, is improved so that the numbers that we have in our armed forces can be up to full strength.
Sir Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her statement and for the additional support that the government has announced. Ukraine, the UK supporting Ukraine is essential so that the annual £3 billion pledge continues. And does the Minister agree that working alongside our allies in these turbulent times is even more essential to bring about an end to this war?
I agree with my honourable friend, and it's absolutely clear that any such negotiations must involve Ukraine, and that they must be happy with the peace that is negotiated. Our role at present, whilst the fighting is still going on in a very fierce manner in that country, is to put them in the strongest possible position that we can in order to enable them properly to negotiate.
I welcome what the Minister said from the dispatch box. Can I ask the Minister if she agrees with me that in this new world and in the event of any peace deal, that the United Kingdom and its European allies must lead in providing Ukraine with military support and potentially military presence across land, air and sea to give Ukraine confidence that any peace will endure? And can I assure the government that it will have my support if that's what it decides to do?
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his remarks, and of course he played a part when he was in office in dealing with these matters, and so is very knowledgeable about them. I can confirm that we aim to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position to enable it to negotiate, and that involves continuing to supply them with the arms and weapons that they need in order to fight, because fighting is still going on in a very fierce manner in that country, so we need to step up and make sure we do that. Certainly over the last period of time, the EU and European nations who are involved in the coalition to support Ukraine have given the majority of military aid and support, 58% of it, as confirmed by the Secretary-General of NATO yesterday. 58% of the support they had last year was from European nations. So European nations are stepping up. We must continue to do so.
Louise Jones.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Minister's comments that Ukraine's security is indivisible from global security. Does she agree with me that we must, in the UK, stand firm against those who believe that you can take land by aggression, and make sure that we continue to send a strong signal around the world that larger nations cannot just grab bits of smaller nations as and when they please?
Well, I think my honourable friend is correct, and as I said in my response to the original question, it's important that we deter that kind of behaviour wherever it's seen around the world.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think what's quite clear from events of the last few hours is that the Atlantic and the High North is of increasing critical concern, and indeed as a former member of Scottish Affairs Committee we looked at it in the last Parliament. I know the Government has had conversations with Denmark, but what other conversations is it having with its joint expeditionary force partners to ensure that those forces are given the support and resources that they need?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Government has continuing and ongoing discussions with our partners in Europe and in the High North.
Remda.
Thank you much, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that this announcement should not affect the UK and this House's support for Ukraine? And can she reassure me that she will work with our armed forces and our defence industries to ensure we are doing everything possible to support Ukrainian forces on the front line?
My honourable friend is correct. We are doing, but need to continue to step up our capacity to support Ukraine with weapons and the force that they need to deter ongoing aggression, and to make sure they're in the strongest possible position in any negotiations that they decide to enter.
So, Julian.
Will the government impress on President Trump at every possible opportunity that the reason why appeasement led to World War II was that it left a vacuum in Europe, whereas the reason why the occupation of Eastern Europe at the end of that war did not lead to World War III was that the United States filled any possible vacuum and contained further aggression. So if he is going for a settlement against the wishes of the Ukrainian people, the least he can do is to guarantee directly the security of that part of Ukraine which remains unoccupied.
Yeah. Well, the honourable gentleman has a longer history of supporting deterrence in this chamber, whichever side of the House he has been on, whether nuclear or whether short of that threshold. And he makes the same point again. And the US Secretary of State for Defence, in his remarks to the contact group, did make it clear that deterrence is important around the world. So I think that there is an agreement there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the announcement of the new £150 million package of military firepower, including drones, tanks and air defence systems for Ukraine. How does the Minister see this boosting Ukrainian resilience and the UK defence sector?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it does both, because there's only one way in which we can provide the Ukrainians with increasing amounts of munitions and things like drones, which are developing rapidly and changing rapidly, and that is by boosting the strength of our defence industries. And that has the additional importance of enabling us as a nation to boost our capacity to deter any potential aggression. And so, in that sense, Mr. Speaker, we can do both, and we are.
Alistair Carmichael.
Mr. Speaker, viewed from Washington, the idea of carving up the map in Europe might look like a pragmatic deal, even if history tells us that that always ends badly. But surely in Europe we understand that no matter what we give Vladimir Putin, he is always going to want more. Yes. So is that the context in which the Strategic Defence Review is being carried out? And does the Minister accept that this is a moment which is going to require a fundamental reset of our relations with our European partners, and not just in defence, and also for us to get real about the financial and economic implications of that?
Yeah. Well, I can assure the honourable gentleman that the Strategic Defence Review is about identifying threats that we face now rather than threats that we perhaps faced before the Ukraine war began. And so I can tell him that it is being conducted with that in mind. And in terms of the deterrence that we need to be able to provide and money that's needed to be spent to provide it, the commitment is, as it has been, that, as the Prime Minister has said, that he will set out a path to 2.5% once the Strategic Defence Review has been published, and we expect that to be in the spring.
Mr. Speaker, and as the Minister will know from her many welcome visits, the Filton and Bradley Stoke constituency is home to many vital defence companies who are playing their role in this vital conflict. And would she agree with me that it's crucial that we continue to support companies right here in the UK to get the military kit needed into the hands of those who need it most in Ukraine?
I agree very much with my honourable friend, and I have had the pleasure to visit her constituency on a number of occasions. And I did visit when it was her predecessor's constituency as well. And so I'm well aware of the strength of the industrial base that she has over there, the defence industrial base. And we do need to strengthen it across our nations and regions, and we are doing. And that has the additional importance of providing deterrence for our nation as well as supporting Ukraine.
Sir Bernard, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister agree that this does clarify what the benchmark of success for the Defence Review must be? And some of the defence chiefs have been expressing this, thus that we must be ready to fight a war with Russia if necessary in order to be able to deter Russia, and if we are to be in any position to guarantee the security of an independent and sovereign Ukraine after whatever is agreed between President Trump and President Putin.
Well, I agree with the right honourable gentleman. We all agree that defence spending needs to increase. That must be done in the context of us setting out in the SDR precisely where we see the threats. It's important to spend the money that we do spend correctly in the best possible way. And I don't think there's any real disagreement across the chamber about that. And we will see in due course when the Strategic Defence Review is published and we set out the path to 2.5%, whether or not in the spring, whether or not those challenges are met.
Martin Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome that any negotiations about Ukraine must involve Ukraine? And in that spirit, can I ask the Minister if she or any of her colleagues have had conversations with their counterparts in Ukraine following these very recent developments to find out how they are feeling? And if not, do they plan to soon?
Well, personally I have not, but I know that my right honourable friend has been having discussions, and indeed our discussions are ongoing very frequently. I have had contact with my counterparts in Ukraine, just not since yesterday.
Brendan O'Hara.
Yesterday, no matter how we in this House wish it wasn't the case, the people of Ukraine were betrayed and the crimes of aggression and annexation rewarded in a telephone call between Washington and Moscow. And right now, we have to be building closer partnerships with our European allies for whom democracy, sovereignty and the rule of law still actually means something. And I welcome the government's announcement that they defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine. But could she set out for the House how will her government do that in the face of two men who believe that because of their military superiority, they can do whatever they want to whomever they want?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the US Secretary of State for Defence made it clear yesterday that any peace negotiations that the Americans are involved in need to lead to a durable peace that does not see a resumption of the aggression that has led to this war, and we support that. And we've made it quite clear also that these negotiations must involve Ukraine. Of course they must. That is the way in which this war will finally end.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Minister's statement, particularly the commitment that any negotiations about Ukraine must involve Ukraine, because if reports of the call between President Trump and Moscow are to be believed, then this is less the art of a deal and more a charter for appeasement. So can the Minister state whether we will be working with NATO allies to establish a clear roadmap with defined timeframes for Ukraine's membership, ensuring long-term deterrence against further inevitable Russian aggression?
Mr. Speaker, we've always said that Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO, and our position is that Ukraine is on an irreversible path to NATO membership. But we've also been clear, always been clear, that this is a process which takes time. I've already said quite clearly that the fate of Ukraine in these negotiations can't be determined without Ukraine being fully involved, and that is our priority. At the moment, to put them in the strongest position, war fighting is still happening, to put them in the strongest possible position to negotiate from strength.
Sir John Whittingham.
In 1994, Russia, along with the UK and the US, signed the Budapest Memorandum pledging to respect the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Given the flagrant breach of that undertaking by Russia, why should Ukraine believe a word that Putin says without concrete security guarantees?
The Honourable Gentleman Right Honourable Gentleman, apologies, is correct that there must be security guarantees. And the US Defence Secretary said as much, that there must be security guarantees. These are all matters for any negotiations that take place, and of course we were supporting Ukraine, and we made quite clear that there cannot be a peace that doesn't involve Ukraine and that they don't support.
Bill Brittle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister assure the House today that it is UK government policy not only that Ukraine must be involved in a peace, but also securing its territorial integrity. But it is only the Ukrainian people, not President Trump nor President Putin, that can determine the destiny of Ukraine.
I think it's quite clear if we say that Ukraine must be involved in those negotiations and that peace negotiations need two sides to come to an agreement, that it therefore follows that the Ukrainians must be content with whatever the process comes up with. There must be security guarantees, the peace must be durable, and everybody agrees with that.
Richard.
Is the Minister concerned that President Trump is repeating false Kremlin propaganda and perpetuating a gross misrepresentation of the war in Ukraine by suggesting, and I quote, that for Ukraine, this was not a good war to go into? Will the UK government be making it clear to the US President in no uncertain terms that Ukraine has just defended itself from invasion, bombing, rape, murder, occupation, and that it is an outrage for President Trump to suggest that Ukraine should give up its sovereign territory to Russia?
We've made it quite clear with our 100-year partnership with Ukraine that we back them in the long term. We've supported them with support across this chamber from many parties over a number of years to ensure that they can continue their fight, and that we will continue to support them during any negotiations that there are, so that they can get the peace that they wish to have.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister's commitment to continued defence support to Ukraine is essential, and I'm sure the House's thoughts are with those Ukrainians fighting for their freedoms and all those Ukrainians in our own communities who have found sanctuary here. Does she agree that any settlement cannot be a repeat of the Budapest Memorandum or the Minsk agreements, which failed to deter future Russian imperial aggression?
Mr. Speaker, I think everybody agrees that any peace that's negotiated must be durable, and that will require security guarantees given the past experience that the Ukrainians have of Russian aggression.
Sir Gavin Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister will be aware, much of the Russian war effort has been sustained by other nations, including a large number of the BRIC nations, supporting Russia through either direct military aid or dual-use products. What is the Minister doing to try and deter that flow of arms that's continuing to sustain Russia?
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman will know very well that there are sanctions that we do our best to police, and that has had some impact. And I think that has to continue, both whilst the war is still ongoing and whilst the peace is being considered and negotiated.
Mr. Speaker, all wars end, but I know it is the feeling of members across the House that we very much owe it to the men and women fighting for Ukraine that when this war ends, it does so with Ukraine in a position of strength at the table and on terms and timescales that Ukraine can really be in the driving seat for.
So I agree with my honourable friend that Ukraine we need to continue to support them, to put them in the strongest possible position, both whilst they are war fighting and during any negotiations that take place.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could we just take one moment to reflect on the hundreds of thousands of lives that have been lost in this war? Ukrainian civilians, Ukrainian soldiers, Russian soldiers, and all of those families that are mourning today. And that efforts were made by Latin American, African leaders and the Pope to try and negotiate earlier on to bring an end to this war. And that we now have possibly an opportunity to demonstrate that one country should never occupy another. And does she believe that there is any possibility in the near future of a ceasefire ahead of negotiations which would be acceptable to obviously the people of Ukraine as well as the rest of Europe, because we do need to see an end to this ghastly conflict?
Well, the right honourable gentleman is correct that conflicts such as this need to come to an end as soon as that is possible. But and so I do acknowledge the point he makes about death on all sides and how bad that is. But I think that it's important for any peace that might be negotiated to be durable and to be lasting. And so we therefore need to focus our minds at present on supporting Ukraine as much as we can to go into any such negotiations in the strongest possible position.
James Wilde.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Given Putin's illegal invasion and declared intent, does the government agree that any negotiations must result in a sovereign Ukraine, and the UK will play its part in providing security guarantees that are meaningful, unlike those in the past, as that is crucial to securing a lasting peace?
He's right that security guarantees are likely to be an important part of any peace agreement given the past history. We have a 100-year partnership with Ukraine. We're committed to ensuring that they can defend their sovereign capability to continue to exist. And so, whilst it's too early to talk about any details of what those security guarantees might be, we are very committed to making sure that Ukraine can continue as an independent state.
We're Hamas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, there will be a concert in Bath Abbey in support of Ukraine. My Bath constituents have been unstinting in their support for Ukrainians living amongst us, but also Ukrainian communities like Alexandria. Now is not the point to weaken our support. How will the government ensure that Ukraine's voice is heard loud and clear in any peace talks, and that no European countries will ultimately or can potentially be bullied by the US President Trump?
Well, I agree very much with the Honourable Lady when she says that our Ukrainian friends who are here in this nation have received a lot of support, not only in her constituency, but across the UK from their friends and neighbours, and that will continue. We have a 100-year partnership with Ukraine. We've supported them through the toughest times of this war with help and arms and necessary support. We will continue to do so.
David Munda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Minister will, like me, acknowledge the huge effort of the Ukrainian diaspora in the UK, of which a large proportion are in Scotland and particularly in and around my own constituency. And therefore, given the huge efforts that they've made, does she agree with me that we must not, in the coming weeks, convey that we have in any way let them or their countrymen down?
Yeah, I do agree with that. We have no intention, I think, in any part of this House of doing so.
Yeah, I'm also surprised we're called so early. No. Grab the chance, you know. Can I thank the Minister very much for her answers? It's very obvious to me and to all members of this House that the Honourable Lady has a heart that wants to help those in Ukraine, and we appreciate that, especially when it comes from government centrally. I do welcome the potential peace that may come. It has to be a piece of justice, of course. It has to be fair to the Ukrainians, and we do hope that a way can be found. Will the Minister not agree that any signs of negotiation are to be welcomed? However, there can be no doubt that Ukraine retains the support of this House. The Honourable Lady has said it. Everyone has said it. What role will the UK have in ensuring that the people of Ukraine have security from further Russian aggression, as, let's be honest, in a year or two from now, when Putin recalibrates his forces?
Yeah. Well, the Honourable Gentleman's right to raise these concerns, and it's quite clear that any peace that's negotiated, which must be with the consent of the Ukrainians themselves, has to be durable, and to the extent that that requires security guarantees, then they have to be present for it to work.
John Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. A truism from ancient Roman times is, if you want peace, prepare for war. And I'm glad that the Strategic Defence Review is preparing us for war, sadly, and in slow motion, unfortunately. But will the Strategic Defence Review consider the unlocked back door that is Ireland? Ireland sits out with NATO. The alarm bells are ringing in NATO, that is clear. But Ireland, cash-rich, sits outside NATO, and it's a critical role in defending undersea cables. We learned from the Irish press that their navy is setting setting sail without the sufficient officers to man their main guns. They're sending out gunboats without guns. What can we do to encourage Ireland to play a full role in what is going to be a confrontation, I think, with Russia?
Well, the honourable gentleman is right that we need to prepare. The Strategic Defence Review will set out what the threats are that we face, and we will then turn our attention to making sure that we obtain the capabilities to deal with that matter. And obviously we will look at any weaknesses that there might be, and we will try and shore them up.
Will Forster.
Mr. Speaker, every time President Trump makes a statement about Ukraine, I hear from constituents in Woking that they're terrified for the future of Ukraine, no more so in the last 24 hours. Will the Minister confirm if the British government were consulted or told about President Trump's call with Vladimir Putin beforehand?
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid it's above my pay grade to know the answer to that question, but I'm sure he'll have an opportunity to ask those as another questions whose pay grade it is not above. But as far as I'm aware, we have had friendly conversations at the Ukraine Defence Contact Group with members of the US administration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What practical help is the Minister and the Government providing to Ukraine's legal system and their judges to ensure the prosecution of war crimes?
We do have a 100-year partnership with Ukraine, which has been signed, and that will be supporting them in any way in which they feel they need support, where we might be able to offer some support. I can't answer his question today about what help we have given, but I'm absolutely certain that if they ask us for help and that it's considered that our legal profession is able to supply it, that we will think about doing so.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Isn't the lesson from this the importance of military strength? Working with all our NATO allies and European allies, but critically being able to stand on our own 2 feet militarily. Don't we need to see defence spending as investment? And in that light, does she wish that we weren't giving however many billion it is to Mauritius and we can invest that money in our defences instead?
Well, we have a commitment, Mr. Speaker, to getting our defence spending back to 2.5% of GDP, and the last time it was at that level, Mr. Speaker, was at the time of the last Labour government.
Right, that completes the urgent question. We now come to business questions. Shall leave the House, Jesse Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Leader.
I shall. The business for the week commencing the 24th of February includes Monday the 24th of February, remaining stages of the Crown Estates Bill Lords. Tuesday the 25th of February, second reading of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education's Transfer of Functions, etc. Bill Lords. Wednesday the 26th of February, Opposition Day, 5th allotted day, debate on a motion in the name of the official opposition, subject to be announced. Thursday the 27th of February, general debate on the 3rd anniversary of the war in Ukraine, followed by general debate on St David's Day. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Friday the 28th of February, the House will not be sitting. The provisional business for the week commencing the 3rd of March will include Monday the 3rd of March, remaining stages of the Finance Bill. Tuesday the 4th of March, all stages of the Church of Scotland Lord High Commissioner Bill. Wednesday the 5th of March, Estimates Day, first allotted day. At 7 p.m, the House will be asked to agree all outstanding estimates. Thursday the 6th of March, business to be determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Friday the 7th of March, private members' bills.
Jesse Norman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Like some of our leading podcasters, we love a storm cloud or two in business questions, and sure enough, the poor government has been desperately hoping that recent events in America would drive the storm clouds away from the UK economy. But even though the news from Washington, D.C. has been startling to say the least, it has not been enough to dispel yet another week of adverse economic headlines. Both the Office of Budget Responsibility and the Bank of England have reportedly downgraded their growth forecasts, the latter cutting theirs by half to a measly 0.75% for the year. So much for the Chancellor's much vaunted dash for growth. Meanwhile, the National Institute has reported that, quote, zero fiscal headroom remains to deal with any shocks in the same week that President Trump has announced 25% tariffs on steel. It's easy to see what's happened here, Mr. Speaker. Labour never expected President Trump to win. They sent a team over to campaign for his opponent. They passed an anti-growth budget, and they did not build enough leeway into their financial planning. Indeed, the Chancellor promised no new taxes or spending. Now we are having to live with the consequences. It was also hard, however, to miss the continuing controversy that the Attorney-General is creating, Mr. Speaker, and harder still not to notice the extremely critical words of his Labour colleague, the noble Lord Glassman. I do not propose to repeat those words here, but they point to two issues which demand this House's full and proper attention. In both cases, the concern is not over the legal positions taken by the Attorney-General as such, but the contradictions which they offer to the rest of government policy. People can agree or disagree about the policy, but the contradictions cannot be fudged. They cannot be blamed on others, and they require explanation. The first is in relation to international law. On the 3rd of February, the Attorney-General told the Council of Europe that the government, and I quote, would never withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights or refuse to comply with judgments of the court. In doing so, he was, of course, simply restating what has been settled UK policy for many decades, a fact which he somehow neglected to mention. The difficulty comes, however, because the government's new legislation on small boats appears to retain a measure banning migrants from claiming protections under the modern slavery laws, a ban which the Prime Minister himself went out of his way to denounce when it was first introduced in 2023. In his words at the time, "It's a crying shame that we face legislation which drives a coach and horses through our world-leading modern slavery framework which protects women from exploitation." That's quite a U-turn. But you see the deeper problem, Mr. Speaker, which is it to be? Will the government abide by international law in this instance and, quote, protect women from exploitation, in the Prime Minister's words, or will it reverse his newly adopted position in support of the ban? The second problem relates to domestic law. Last November, the Attorney-General strengthened his official guidance to government lawyers on possible legal risk. He specifically cautioned against offering legal support for policies which have only a tenable case. And elsewhere, he's pledged to restore checks on executive, that is, on government action. But this comes at a time when the Prime Minister himself has specifically pledged to end vexatious litigation while building a huge amount of new housing and infrastructure. Again, you see the problem, Mr. Speaker. It was the problem that the noble Lord Glassman was pointing out when he praised, and I quote, the rule of law, but not of lawyers, that this edict will have a chilling effect on what I think we can all already agree is pretty sluggish decision-making by ministers. Will the government now take less legal risk, as the Attorney-General requires? Will its lawyers now require ministers to act only when it can defeat a legal challenge? Or will it curb the judicial reviews and other legal cases that will otherwise inevitably disrupt its building plans? I do not expect the Leader of the House to tell us how the government plans to resolve these obvious problems today, but the House would, I am sure, be grateful if we could have a debate in government time on what on earth the government's approach will be to resolve them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I first of all update the House on the work of the Modernisation Committee, which I chair? We established the committee to rebuild trust in politics, raise standards, improve culture and make Parliament more effective. In recent years, the role of an MP has changed significantly, with many more demands and expectations in the constituency. And the makeup of the Commons has changed a great deal too, with many more parties represented and members better reflecting the country we serve. So how we do things needs to change too. And can I thank all of those who put into our wide-ranging call for views. Work is already underway with the Standards Committee on Members Outside Employment and the Procedure Committee on Proxy Votes and Call Lists. And today we have set out 3 further areas for consideration: improving accessibility, ensuring the Chamber remains the crucible of national debate, and looking at how we can provide more certainty to parliamentary business. The honourable gentleman raised a number of points with me, and he gave a list of some economic statistics. I might want to give him some alternative ones, if I may, Mr. Speaker. Inflation is down. Mortgage rates are coming down. Wages are growing fastest, at their fastest rate in 3 years. Business investment at the highest level for 19 years. And the IMF and the OECD both saying Britain will be Europe's fastest growing major economy in coming years. So instead, you know, the honourable gentleman, he supported the former Prime Minister, not the one who's in his place now, who crashed the economy, sent mortgage rates flying and inflation at record highs. So I won't take lectures from him, quite honestly. And yet again, he raises the issue of the Attorney-General. And quite honestly, the party opposite and their friends in the right-wing media trying to undermine the Attorney-General is, quite frankly, pathetic. They were once the party of law and order, and now they seek to undermine it at every turn. And I can tell the honourable gentleman that as someone who works very closely with the Attorney-General, he's an asset to this government and a formidable partner in our attempts to restore integrity to how we make and implement laws in this country. Their laws didn't fit that remit, and that's why they never got off the ground in many cases, and they were challenged time and time again in the courts, wasting everyone's time and money and not delivering the outcomes that they wanted. And we're not going to take lectures from them on that, I have to say. And I was surprised that the shadow leader did ask me about the Borders Bill, which we debated this week. He didn't want to talk about the substance of it because the previous government lost control of our borders, with net migration rising to a record high of almost 1 million in their last year in office, and small boats crossing increased 100-fold. But to be fair to the honourable gentleman, he knew the Rwanda plan was a gimmick and wouldn't work, and he said as much when he resigned as a minister. But I am at a loss as to why he and the front bench opposite voted against giving Border Security Command new counter-terrorism powers and other measures. It's because they're chasing the tail of reform so much that they're going round in dizzying circles, leaving the incredible sight of the Conservative Party, the modern Conservative Party, voting against strengthening our borders. I also noticed, Mr. Speaker, that he didn't take up my invitation from last week to celebrate the Leader of the Opposition's first 100 days in office. No, he didn't. But I did notice that earlier this week he did mark the anniversary of another leader being elected. Ah, those were the days, weren't they? When the Tory party knew what they stood for, when they were a serious party and they represented large parts of the country. But I'm not sure that Margaret Thatcher would even recognise them today. And it's no wonder that they herald and respect their former leaders far more than their current one, is it? Let's be honest. Because, like their current leader, their party is a shadow of its former self.
Navandra Mishra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, women's centres provide vital support for women facing a range of issues, including isolation, domestic abuse, health issues and navigating the social security system, amongst a wide range of other support. I recently visited the Stockport Women's Centre and want to place on record my thanks to all staff and volunteers there who support women from across Stockport. Can we have a debate in government time on the enormous contribution of organisations supporting women in our society, in particular women's centres across England, and how to secure the essential funding so that they can continue their important work?
Well, can I thank him for that, and can I join him in congratulating the work of the Women's Refuge in Stockport and all the work that they do. He will know that this government is committed to tackling violence against women and girls, and in fact we want to see those statistics being halved over the next 10 years, which is a huge ambition for this government, and one that's going to take really detailed and committed work, which I know he will join with us in doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we now know, local government is being reorganised, and the Labour government has cancelled local elections while affected councils work out how on earth they're going to reorganise themselves. Now, I and many residents in these areas would have hoped that that plan would have been in place before elections were cancelled, because there are lots of issues that are very much up in the air, and I think the public deserve to know what they're in for. Let's take Woking, for example. Successive Conservative administrations at Woking Council racked up £2 billion of debt. £2 billion, with absolutely no plan for how to pay it off. And in Greater Essex, Conservative-run Thurrock ran up debts of around £1.5 billion, largely due to investments in a solar farm that didn't exist. Both Essex and Surrey are now in the fast track for local government reorganisation, so what's going to happen to these debts? Last week, the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution wrote a letter to all the leaders of the two-tier councils and unitary authorities in Essex. In it, he said, "There is no proposal for council debt to be addressed centrally or written off as part of reorganisation. Proposals should reflect the extent to which the implications of this can be managed locally." So will the Leader of the House ask the Minister to come forward with a statement to confirm that what he really means is that local residents across places such as Essex and Surrey will be forced to pay for the incompetence of previous Tory administrations of other councils, that they will likely see reduced services and higher council tax bills simply because this Labour government is determined to press ahead with local government reorganisation and it is not prepared to offer any financial support to alleviate this?
Well, can I thank her for that question? She raises a very important issue of local government finances, and she is absolutely right to identify the mess that local government finances were left in by the previous government. Many councils had to spend their reserves on statutory services, not what it was intended to do. We saw council after council going bust month after month under the previous government, and many more were left in severe debt, like the one that she describes in her constituency. We have given local government a significant settlement this year, but we recognise that more needs to be done. That means we need to fix the long-term problems, we need multi-year settlements, and I know the transition is difficult, but the devolution revolution, giving local areas more say, more powers over how they spend and raise their revenue, will in time lead to a more secure and sustainable funding for local government, and I will make sure that the Minister comes to this House with regular updates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the stroke of a pen, Tory-led Northumberland County Council are about to wipe off 9,000 people from the county's housing waiting list. And my office is beset by constituents desperately in need of secure, affordable accommodation. But even those in the highest priority bandings are often unable to get the houses they need. This is a simple, callous attempt to massage the huge housing lists rather than deal with the issue. Can we have a debate in government time to discuss how we can ensure that those in need of decent, affordable housing are not easily cast aside and thrown onto the scrap heap as they are in the case of Northumberland County Council?
I'm really sorry to hear what's happened in Northumberland County Council with their housing waiting lists, and he's absolutely right to identify that waiting lists are far too high, that many people are in desperate need of an affordable or social or council housing, and that's why this government is really committed to not just building 1.5 million new homes over the course of this Parliament, but ensuring that we've got very many more council houses, affordable houses and social houses within that, and we've announced further plans on that this week. But I will absolutely ensure that ministers are accountable for these matters and they come forward.
Chair of the Backbench Committee, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to the business that the Leader has announced, I would just remind the House that for the Estimates Day debates on the 5th of March, the Backbench Business Committee is taking applications, and applications close a week tomorrow. We'll then consider the applications, and we understand there may be several applications chosen for debates at our meeting on the 25th of February. In addition to the business that the Leaders announced, on Thursday the 6th of March, there will be a debate on International Women's Day, followed by a debate on political finance rules. On Thursday the 13th of March, if we're given the time, there'll be a debate on the future of farming, followed by a debate on knife crime amongst children and young people. Now, on a rough calculation, Mr. Speaker, with the queue of applications we have for the Chamber, we have enough business to allocate until the end of June, provided we're given every single Thursday that's available. In Westminster Hall, Mr. Speaker, when we come back, on Tuesday the 24th of February, there'll be a debate on maternity services, followed by, on Thursday, a debate on rural crime and on women's health. I will leave the other business for when we come back. Now, Mr. Speaker, on Sunday the 23rd of February, when we're due to come back after recess, the renowned hate preacher, Mohammed Hublas, is due to speak in this country. He's been banned in Germany, banned in Holland, and I know that the Shadow Home Secretary has written to the Home Secretary already asking that he be banned from this country. Given that anti-Semitism is at its highest peak ever and anti-Muslim hatred is at a peak, it is clear that the last thing we want is someone coming along and stirring up racial and religious hatred. So can the leader use her good offices to encourage the Home Secretary to issue a banning order to prevent this man from coming to this country?
Well, can I thank him for announcing the forthcoming backbench business, both in the Chamber and in Westminster Hall. I'm sure he will understand that I can't guarantee him every Thursday between now and the end of June, but you know, we have been allocating backbench business debates regularly and often, and hopefully that will get filled in the usual way. And I'm really glad to hear about the debate on International Women's Day, something that he and I have discussed, and I will let colleagues know about it more formally. But we are hoping to arrange to get all the women, all the members of women members of the House together for a photo in the Chamber to mark International Women's Day. So hopefully everyone.
Not approved, but I will do. No.
I know that's why. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. That's why I'm not formally announcing. I'm saying we are hoping to, and I'm gently lobbying for that. Your good offices. Thank you very much indeed. But he raises a very serious matter, as he does often in the House, about how we tackle anti-Semitism in this country, how we tackle hate speech, and how we take action to make sure that those who are spreading hate and anti-Semitism are prevented from doing so. And I shall certainly raise the matter with the Home Secretary and make sure he gets a full response.
John Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this week I was visited by Brent constituents as part of the Board of Deputies Parliamentary Advocacy Day. We talked about how great our multi-faith forum is in Brent, and one of the asks was that we have a British Jewish Culture Month to celebrate all the multiculturalism and the diversity within the Jewish community. One of them said to me, you can have two Jewish people in the room and 3 different opinions. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have a Jewish Culture Month? And I wonder if we could spend some government time discussing this.
Oh, God. Stabbing myself with my folder there. Sorry, everybody. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this? I'm really pleased to hear she had such a good meeting with the Board of Deputies and all the work that she and others do across this House on multi-faith gatherings and bringing those together. And she's absolutely right to identify the fantastic contribution that the Jewish community have long played and continue to play at the heart of our country. And I'm sure that there will be others who would support her calls for a British Jewish Culture Month.
British Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I met 2 of my constituents, Mark Farrow and Stephen White, who volunteer for the Driving Ukraine charity, which takes modified vehicles to serve as ambulances or other humanitarian purposes out in Ukraine. They're taking 1 more vehicle out this month, funded by generous donations from local constituents. So can I ask the leader to join with me in commending their efforts, but also the charitable contributions made by so many across our country in supporting Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and thank her for the provision that she's provided next week for us to commemorate their efforts.
Well, can I thank him, and can I take this opportunity to pay my respects to the honourable gentleman? I think, you know, the way that he's conducted himself since leaving office and remaining here as a parliamentarian, active or on behalf of his constituents, really is a model for others to follow. And I will, of course, join him in commending Mark and Steve for the work that they do. This whole House wants to support Ukraine. We have continued to support Ukraine, and many of our constituents do that in a range of different ways, and I'm really pleased we've got the debate not next week when we return. Thank you.
David Baines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the Rugby League All-Party Parliamentary Group, can I start by thanking you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulating you on your recent term as President of the Rugby Football League. You've always been a great champion for the greatest game, and I thank you for that. And I'm sure you're as excited as I am that the season's underway and Super League kicks off tonight. This year, Rugby League celebrates its 130th anniversary. In all this time, no one from the sport of Rugby League has ever received the highest honour of a knighthood or a damehood, not one person in 130 years. Despite having many worthy recipients and candidates for such honours, including the likes of Billy Boston, Alex Murphy and Kevin Sinfield. Does the leader share my dismay and frustration and surprise at this oversight? And can she advise me on how best to raise this and who with, to ensure that our great game and some of the outstanding individuals who represent it receive the recognition that they deserve?
Well, I absolutely do recognise what the honourable gentleman has raised with me today, and I know that Mr. Speaker will absolutely share some of his views on that, and I'm not speaking for him, but I know that we all want to recognise the valuable contribution that Rugby League plays to our communities and to our country, and it is a surprise, I think, that they've not been honoured in the way that others have. He'll know that I can't comment on individuals' right to get an honour. I too think that Kevin Sinfield has been the most incredible ambassador, not just for sport, but for charity raising, and he certainly would be somebody I think we should all consider. But I will make sure that the powers that be have heard his comments today, and I'll help him to make representations on that.
Just to say, as I've been tempted into the conversation, I've also raised it with the Prime Minister because there is a major injustice and the stigma against Rugby League where not one person's ever knighted. But the fact that Kevin Sinfield has raised millions for the motor neurone disease, and on behalf of what he's done, I would have thought, now is the time, and we wait no longer. Now then, let us see, where do I go next? Ellie Challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Home Office published updated guidance which seems to prevent anyone from being granted citizenship if they've come to this country through a dangerous journey, despite the fact that for the vast majority of those seeking refuge, there are no safe and legal routes available. Can we have a debate in government time on this deeply misjudged policy, and in particular on the call from the former Home Secretary to the current Home Secretary to consider very carefully its implications?
Well, can I thank her for raising that? She will be aware that there actually are already very long-standing rules which prevent those from illegally arriving in this country from being granted citizenship, and we've strengthened those in a small way for those who arrive on small boats to also not be able to become British citizens. It is important that we take away some of the pull factors that bring people to this country and that we take tough action to control her borders. She does make a very important point about safe routes, which is something that I know the Home Secretary has been taking action on as well, and does update the House on regularly, but I will make sure it continues to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the House will be aware, of course, that the Assisted Dying Bill has been in committee this week, all slightly delayed, and for good reason, because it's obviously a very important issue to debate. But can she confirm if the government will still be waiting till the end of the committee stage before publishing the impact assessment on the bill?
Thank her for raising it. She's absolutely right. This bill has gone into line-by-line committee this week. She will be aware this is a private member's bill and that the government remains neutral on this issue as a matter of conscience. But the government has been clear that we will work with the bill committee. Indeed, there are ministers on the committee to ensure that this bill is workable and operable, and any such assessments will be made available in due course.
This week is Wear It Red Week, and an opportunity to show our support for the amazing work of the Midlands Air Ambulance charity. So my question to the Leader of the House, as it's the week before recess, I'm being very gentle on her, is will she join me, please, in congratulating and thanking the Midlands Air Ambulance for the amazing work that they do in support of my constituents and the wider Midlands, and also in the way that it supports the work of our NHS. Well done.
Well, can I thank her for being gentle on me? I don't mind her being robust with me either. You know, that's what the job's all about, and I'm here for that. But I would absolutely join her in congratulating the great work that the West Midlands Air Ambulance do, what vital, critical work that they do, often in a voluntary capacity and other means. And had I known it was Wear It Red Day, I would have worn one of my red outfits. But maybe next time she'll let me know.
Lee Pitcher.
Last week was a big one for Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme. On Tuesday, Mayor Ros Jones announced that Munich Airport International will provide operational and management services for Doncaster Sheffield Airport upon its reopening. Then on Thursday, the Chancellor took part at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park, amazing, come and see us, with Dan Fell and businesses from the Chamber of Commerce to discuss, amongst other things, her support for the reopening of the airport. With National Apprenticeship Week currently taking place, it's vital that those opportunities around investments in projects like this create skilled jobs in the area. Will the Leader of the House join me in recognising the importance of creating skilled jobs across the UK and in supporting myself and other local MPs as we work across businesses to ensure apprenticeship opportunities are in place once our airport is reopened?
Well, once again, the honourable gentleman lives up to the name that I've given him as Mr Doncaster Airport, which he's long living up to, and thank him for that. I'm really pleased to hear that preparations are now have got a step closer in terms of flights coming into Doncaster again. But what he raises is the importance that something like Doncaster Airport is not just about transport connectivity, but it brings economics, jobs and opportunity for young people in the community, and I commend him for his work.
Lewis.
I shall try, Mr Speaker, to avoid the temptation that when the Leader of the House, in her upbeat way, describes the Attorney-General as an asset, that we can all agree at least on the first syllable, and instead ask for a debate on, took a while, ask for a debate on trends in defence spending during and after the Cold War, so that both sides of the House will have the chance to appreciate that when one is involved in a serious confrontation, we should not be arguing about 2.5%, we should be arguing about a figure much nearer to the 5% that President Trump, for once, is right to demand.
Well, I'm going to ignore his invitation to say anything other than I absolutely stand by my comments that the Attorney-General is a fantastic asset to this government, and we are lucky to have him working with us. But on defence spending, he will know this government is absolutely committed to working towards 2.5% of GDP, but he's right to point out that defence spending has been too low to meet the needs of our strategic needs of our country in this context. And in fact, he will also know that the last time government spending reached 2.5% of GDP on defence was under the last Labour government, and it never reached there under his parties.
Very Gardner.
Debate on Thames Water, who provide water services to 20 million people in this country. We now know that they received from bill payers money
which was supposed to go to environmental measures such as stopping illegal discharges, and that money has been used to pay bonuses and to pay dividends. We need to discuss, do we not, whether the people running Thames Water are fit and proper persons to run a public company.
Well, he's absolutely right that the way our water industry has been run over recent years is absolutely shocking, with profits and shareholder dividends being paid out over and above or infrastructure spending, or indeed even when discharges and other things are happening to our waterways. Absolutely shocking. And that's why this government's brought in the water bill, which I think is about to receive royal assent, which will stop these erroneous bonuses being paid. We've established a new water commission, and there are further reforms coming, but I will ensure the House is kept fully up to date.
Will Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The main road through my constituency of Woking is closed for the 4th time in short succession, following cladding falling off a hotel. Cladding fell off it during construction and has fallen off it afterwards since it's opened. The developer, Sir McAlpine, are responsible and seem in no rush to fix this problem. Please will the Leader of the House agree to hold a debate on the responsibility of developers, and if those companies prove that they cannot deliver, that they should lose the right to work for the public sector?
Well, the building safety scandal and the cladding scandal, he will know, is really a sort of shocking embarrassment that faces our country, and we still got some way to go in putting that right. The government set out a remediation action plan just before Christmas. This is on top of the previous Building Safety Act that was passed under the previous government, but we absolutely need to be able to hold freeholders and developers to account for when they put dangerous cladding on buildings and they're refusing to replace it.
Okay. Rachel Baskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Belfry in York is losing around 1.4 million with the changes to the listed places of worship scheme, and also the National Railway Museum had money promised by the last government. I appreciate it wasn't necessarily real money taken out, but it's midway, both these projects midway through development. Will she make representation to the Chancellor to say when projects are underway and they've been stripped down and development started, that money should be put in place to ensure that they can see their completion?
Leader.
Well, I'm sorry to hear what's happening in the Belfry in York. The places of worship scheme, she will know we've had to look at making some changes there, but I will certainly ensure that that her particular the honourable gentleman opposite is describing it as cuts. In fact, what it was that the previous scheme, like many others from the previous government, was a work of fiction, and there wasn't the funding there that people thought was there. But I will ensure that she gets a full reply about the particular case that she raises.
Bruce Snowden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If you had visited the Fylde coast recently, you will have seen lots of volunteers burying Christmas trees in the sand, and I'm sure the Speaker will back me up that this is not some strange Lancashire tradition. This is actually about a project to vastly extend the sand dunes that are vital for nature and for flood defences in Fylde, and over 11,000 Christmas trees over the years have now been buried into the beaches to help rebuild those sand dunes. And it is a fantastic project by the Wildlife Trust. 80% of the sand dunes over the last 150 years have been lost, and this project has seen 6 hectares of dunes completely replenished. And recently, the Deputy Prime Minister agreed to nip up the road to Fylde to have a pint with me to discuss an issue. So I was wondering if I could tempt the Leader of the House with an ice cream and see if she'll come and have a walk on St Anne's Beach with me to see this project, meet some of the fantastic volunteers who've put over 10,500 hours of volunteers into this project, and discuss how we can debate the coastal wildlife.
So Fylde.
Well, I have very many happy memories of rolling down the sand dunes in his constituency as a child and as an adult, actually. But less said about that, the better. You know, it's really good to hear about the project of burying Christmas trees. I had heard about some of the restorations of the dunes, but I didn't appreciate that that was being done by the burial of so many Christmas trees. But I am always happy to accept such lovely invitations. So perhaps we can wait till the weather's a bit nicer and I'll come and join him.
Matt Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry I forgot to wear red today. Net zero, if we're to meet net zero, we need to address our CO2 emissions from our housing stock. We have some of the oldest housing stock across the whole of Europe. It counts for 17% of our CO2 emissions. One of the issues, though, is that houses that are in conservation areas or grade 2 properties cannot be changed to double glazing or to secondary glazing, as I understand it. So can we have a debate about the hundreds of thousands of homes up and down this country, households who want to do the right thing, they want to reduce their CO2 emissions, they want to reduce their bills, and they want to do the right thing for this country, and that is change their glazing, just simple as that, and we need to make changes to our planning legislation.
Leader.
Well, he's absolutely right. The Warms Home Scheme and other measures that the government are bringing in are vital to reducing our demand for energy, but also reducing people's bills as well. And he raises a really important point, and there is always a balance to be had here about ensuring that we do keep people's homes warm and their bills down whilst retaining heritage and other matters. And I think he's right to raise it, and I will ensure that he gets a full response.
Jeremy Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I strongly support the request made by the member for Brent North for a statement about Thames Water from the government? This company gives itself huge profits, which pays to shareholders and pays its executives massive amounts of money, presides over leaks all over its region, pollutes our seas and our rivers, and to me, it is an example of the disaster of privatisation of the water industry. And what we need from the government is a clear statement that instead of regulation, we will return Thames Water to public ownership so that the people of London and the whole of the region can enjoy clean water and our seas will no longer be polluted by them.
Minister.
Well, he's right, there's been severe problems and that these problems have let everybody down, and they're completely unacceptable, and they do come from severe failures of governance and regulation as well that underpin the water sector. That's why we've just passed a water special measures bill. I think we'll receive royal assent shortly, which will prevent these erroneous bonuses being paid for poor performance, and we will be bringing forward soon as well some further measures for wider water reform which are currently under review, and I will ensure the House is updated of those matters and that the honourable gentleman's opinions are included in that.
Graham Downey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week, the UK Government announced positive changes to apprenticeships which will cut red tape and increase collaboration between businesses and skill providers, setting more young people on a path to successful careers. By contrast, in Scotland, the last 2 years have seen delays and freezes on modern apprentices, harming people in my constituency and across Scotland. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that the SNP should be following the lead set by this UK Labour Government and taking radical action to support the next generation of the workforce?
Leader of the House.
Well, I absolutely do agree with him. I mean, the Scottish Government have failed on apprenticeships, let's be honest, with a 10-year decline in apprenticeship starts and numbers. This government, this new Labour government, is absolutely determined to turn around the problems we've seen with apprenticeships in England and elsewhere, and that's why we're unlocking 10,000 new apprenticeship starts this week with some of our changes. But the Scottish Government absolutely should follow our lead and ensure that young people in Scotland get the opportunities they deserve.
Andrew Rosendale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like the Leader of the House to be aware that the residents of the Old Church Estate in Romford have been terribly let down by Sanctuary Housing Association for months on end, with long delays to urgent repairs, leaving residents suffering without heating or hot water throughout winter, as well as malfunctioning lifts, rendering disabled residents prisoners in their own homes. As she will know, Section 11 of the Housing Act mandates landlords to carry out essential repairs within a reasonable time frame, but this is often not enforced in practice, leaving constituents like mine living in unacceptably poor conditions. So, will the Leader of the House please ask the Minister for Housing to make a statement on this frightful situation and take urgent action to get this heartbreaking matter resolved as quickly as possible for my constituents?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for raising that on behalf of his constituents, and I'm sure it's something that many of us across the House are familiar with, and I'm really sorry to hear of the poor service being provided, the poor state of repair of houses being provided by Sanctuary Housing in his constituency. He will know that that's why, one of the reasons why this government wants to strengthen the rights of renters, whether they be in social housing or private housing, and we are currently taking through the Renters' Rights Bill, which will give those living in houses in his constituency even more right to ensure that they live in a decent, well-maintained, safe home.
Julie Minns.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I know that I and many new members of this House have been very grateful over the last 7 months for your guidance and support from your teams in helping us get to grips with the rules and procedures of this place. Rules and procedures that I know the Leader of the House is committed to ensuring are upheld and respected at all times. I imagine she therefore shares my concern that last night's political broadcast from the Conservative Party not only extensively featured the use of a taxpayers' funded ministerial car, but also was filmed in part on the parliamentary estate in Speaker's Court, in direct contravention, as I understand it, of the rules of this House. Can I ask the Leader of the House to ensure that this matter will be fully investigated?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank her for raising this matter that's very recently come to light. She's absolutely right. This is against protocol. It is against protocol of this House to speak without permission, particularly in Speaker's Court. And I think the Leader of the Opposition, if she is hearing this today, should offer Mr Speaker a full and speedy apology for that. But also, we have high standards that we're all judged by, and using ministerial, government-paid for, publicly paid for cars for party political campaigning purposes is not allowed. And rightly so, because our constituents wouldn't expect that to be the case. So I hope the Leader of the Opposition has heard this question today and takes action to put this right.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and with grateful thanks to the Backbench Business Committee, I'm leading a debate in Westminster Hall this afternoon on HIV Testing Week, and obviously the APPG on HIV and AIDS is very keen to highlight this week, and indeed very much welcome the test that the Prime Minister took as part of highlighting that facility. But in poorer countries, tests and indeed treatment are only available thanks to the resources from the Global Fund. Given the uncertainty of funding from the United States, can the Right Honourable Lady ensure that a statement comes forward about the UK's approach to the replenishment of the Global Fund, because this time around the UK's leadership will be vital if the fund is to be sustained?
Leader of the House.
Can I first of all just let him know that I have raised the issue with ministers that he raised with me last week about the Hughes report, and I'm hoping that he and I will get a full reply about that. Yet again this week he raises a very important matter, and can I congratulate him on securing the Westminster Hall debate on that this afternoon. HIV testing is very important. I was so proud to see our Prime Minister being the first Prime Minister to take a public HIV test, because I think that will really encourage others to do so. And he will know that it is our mission to end new transmissions of HIV in England by 2030. But he raises important matters of the Global Fund. We continue to support funding for that. We'll continue to do that. And I will ensure that he's updated on how that can continue.
Gurinder Jassan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As an officer of the Your Party Parliamentary Group for Semiconductors, it was a pleasure to join colleagues in welcoming academics industrialists, researchers, manufacturers to a reception in this palace this week celebrating semiconductors. The UK has very real strength in this area. Our research is the best. Research base is the best in the world. Our manufacturing base is world beating, and we have semiconductor clusters across the UK bringing high quality employment particularly in compound semiconductors. However, the industrial strategy, we were told at the event, only mentioned semiconductors once. Would the Leader of the House ensure ministers are aware of the importance of a reliable supply chain of high-quality semiconductors to our drive to become more self-sufficient in green energy, defence and other sectors, and to our growth agenda?
He's right to raise the vital role that semiconductors play to future technologies, our current industry as well, and we are a world leader in this space, and I know that in his region that is particularly the case as well. They are covered in our industrial strategy, and it's that we've got a new industrial strategy for the first time in many years, which academia, business and others are absolutely welcoming, and rightly so. It's also about our economic security as well, and making sure that we've got these homegrown technologies and all of that can support them. But I will ensure that he gets a full reply about that.
Robbie Moore.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this year marks the 160th anniversary of Ilkley train station, a vital transport link for my town, and I'm delighted to say that Stephen Thornton, who I met again just last Saturday, and his wider team of the Friends of Ilkley rail station are pressing ahead with developing a business case for improving interconnectivity between the train station and the buses which pick up from the adjoining street to improve accessibility and make it a more inviting and user-friendly place for all, including, Madam Deputy Speaker, trying to get toilets at Ilkley train station. So can we have a debate in government time on how the government can support these vital projects to get off the ground?
Well, can I join him in congratulating the Friends of Ilkley train station and all that they're doing in trying to improve the experience of Ilkley train station, and of course the interchange with local buses as well, which is absolutely vital. I strongly support the provision of public toilets. It's a particular bugbear of my own as well. But this government is taking strong steps to ensure access to all on our transport network, including at Ilkley train station.
Luke Akerst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents in North Durham have endured months of inadequate services by Go North East, with widespread and last-minute bus cancellations resulting in people missing school, work and health appointments. This is the one issue being raised with me more than anything else at the moment. Can we have a debate in government time about the reliability of bus services and what measures are in place to hold operators to account for such poor service?
The House.
Well, affordable, reliable local bus services is a matter of great importance to all of our constituents and clearly to his as well. And I'm sorry to hear of the poor service that they have received. This government is absolutely committed to delivering more reliable, affordable buses. We've brought forward the buses bill, which will be coming to this House hopefully soon, and we've put in an extra £1 billion of investment. But that's only the start. We really do need to ensure that communities like his are better served with better buses.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. Will the Leader allow some time to debate the importance of small businesses to the rural economy? The annual Countryside Alliance Awards celebrate rural businesses, communities and individuals who make significant contributions to the countryside. This year, I'm delighted to report to the Leader that there are 4 finalists from the Scottish Borders. We have the Gordon Arms, Allington Inn, Scots of Kelso and Anderson and Sondergaard Wild Game Cartoucherie. Will the Leader join me in congratulating these businesses on reaching the final and agree with me that this is yet another fantastic reason to visit the Scottish Borders?
Leader of the House.
Well, as is becoming a weekly occurrence, but I have to say that today's offer of an invitation is one that I really could take up, because visiting those hospitality businesses in his constituency that have made the finalist list of the Countryside Alliance Awards does sound like a fantastic invitation, and I congratulate them on getting so far.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week, Pub Aid announced the finalists of the Community Pub Hero Awards. From over 1,000 entries, I'm over the moon to say that the Bird in Hand pub in my constituency of Stafford, Eccleshall and the Villagers is one of the 31 finalists. It's an incredible venue which does so much for the community in Stafford, particularly for the Royal British Legion. Will the leader agree to a debate on the importance of pubs to their local communities, and will she come and visit the Bird in Hand with me when she next comes to Stafford? Leader of the House.
Well, I'm getting a lot of invitations to pubs today. I have become a complete lightweight, though, so I'm generally on the 0 beer these days. But the Bird in Hand in Stafford sounds like a great hospitality venue, and congratulations to them for being shortlisted. And like many other pubs, they really are at the heart of our community, not just providing great food and fare, but great company, a warm place for many people to be in these winter months, and they're absolutely at the heart of our communities. And I'm sure, I think she might be inviting me to her constituency soon anyway, that we can pay a visit to the Bird in Hand soon.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Could I ask the leader for the help from her office, please? The government's produced an elective reform plan. A key plank of this is having 10 direct-to-test pathways. I've written 2 parliamentary questions to find out what's being considered and told there are 10 pathways under consideration. So I raised it with the Health Secretary directly this week. He answered, if he wants to do a pop quiz, he could use Google. If you do Google, it says there are plans for 10 pathways being considered. And here is why it matters, because the plan had one example which was found to be unsafe and met with outcry from doctors and has been removed. So how can this House and the public hold the government to account if we don't get answer to questions? I do know the Health Secretary's been under a lot of pressure. He's lost a health minister. Prime Minister Starmer has produced a new minister. But it's not an excuse for being over the details. So would she kindly write to him to ask what those 10 tests are being considered so we can scrutinise it in this House properly?
Leader of the House.
Well, look, I think I'll swerve his invitation there to make a party political point, because it's really not becoming of him, I would say, in this occasion. But he does raise a serious matter, and he knows I take very seriously the issues of parliamentary questions being answered both in a timely but also a very forthcoming way, where the information that's being asked by a Member of Parliament is actually provided in the answer to that parliamentary question. And if that's not the case in this case, I will absolutely take that up with the Health Secretary and ensure that he gets the full reply he needs.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A couple of weeks ago at my surgery in Wortley, I met a resident who's been waiting 26 weeks for a hip operation. Sadly, he just found out he had at least another 40 weeks to wait. During my meeting with him, it was clear that he was in pain. He was on strong medication, but his eyes were watering every time he did any sort of movement that involved his hip. Now, I'm proud to be part of a government that has put so much money into the NHS to bring those waiting lists down, but given his situation, and given the situation of many people like him, please can we have a debate in government time on the urgent need to spend this money and to get these waiting lists down as quickly as we possibly can.
Leader of the House.
Well, the shocking figures of waiting lists, over 7 million people waiting on our NHS waiting list, like his constituent. Every single one of those are a story like the one that he's described today, of someone in pain, someone being debilitated, someone not able to work or get on with their life as they need to. And that's why getting down the waiting lists is one of the first priorities of this government. We've set out an elective reform plan. We want to hit the 18-week referral target by the end of this Parliament. That is incredibly ambitious, but I really hope that as part of those ambitious plans, his constituent gets the hip replacement, I think he said, the hip replacement that he desperately needs.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Ben and Amy Branson are my constituents. Their daughter Bethany was 19 when she was killed on the 8th of November 2022 by a drunk driver. The driver crashed his van into a car, then fled the scene, before skipping a red light, crashing into a second time into several cars, one of which was carrying Bethany. At the scene of his arrest, the driver admitted guilt and said, "I hope I killed someone. Oh well, you know what? I'll get 3, 4, 5 years. Hopefully I killed them." Despite his admission of guilt at the scene, and there being no doubt as to his crime, he was still entitled to a 1/3 reduction in his sentence for his guilty plea. So 15 years was reduced to 10 years, and with good behaviour he could serve as little as 6 years and 8 months imprisonment. Bethany's family do not believe that this reflects the severity and heartbreak of this crime. So will the Leader of the House agree to holding a debate on sentencing policy?
Leader of the House.
Well, my heart goes out to Bethany's family. What a heartbreaking and frankly absolutely appalling case that he has raised today. Every single one of us can relate to what an awful tragedy this must be for the family, and how worse that is made by what then seems to be such a shocking injustice to how the offender was then treated in this case. He will know that these matters were raised many times in previous parliaments. There have been strengthening to sentencing there, but it perhaps does need to go further. We've currently got a sentencing review taking place. There will be updates coming forward to this House. There will be further legislation on some of these matters where he could raise them further, but we do need to do more to reduce tragic deaths like the one that he describes, and really deter people from drink driving and dangerous driving in the way that he describes.
Chris Bloor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairman. My constituents are incredibly proud of our non-league football club, Redditch United. Led by Chairman Dave Faulkner, the Valley Stadium hosts thousands of young boys and girls playing football, hosts Send Learners, and is a hub for local businesses. They have even recently secured a new kit sponsorship with the Redditch football community. Would the Leader of the House consider a debate in government time about how the government can support non-league football clubs that are so often the local beating heart of our communities?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I join him in congratulating those from Redditch United and all the work that they do. Grassroots sport and non-league football clubs, absolutely at the heart of our communities and the heart of what we do. We have got the football regulation bill hopefully coming back to this House very soon from the Lords, and I'm sure that would be a great opportunity for him to raise the important work that Redditch United do.
Emma Foodie.
Year 4 pupils from Burnside Primary School in Cramlington recently got in touch with me because as part of their geography lesson they've been studying our local rivers and waterways, and they're really concerned about the pollution and difficulties that are being created as a result of poor treatment of them. Can we please have a debate on the actions that this government is taking to clean up our rivers, seas and waterways and address the concerns of those pupils at Burnside School?
Leader of the House.
Well, I know that young people like those at Burnside School are incredibly worried about our waterways, the pollution in our rivers and seas, absolutely unacceptable. This government is cleaning up the mess, quite frankly, left to us by the previous government in this regard. We're taking tough action on the water companies, on discharge and pollution through the water bill, and there are further measures coming soon as well.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As Chair of the APPG and Freedom of Religious Belief, the APPG has started the Prisoner of Conscience scheme in collaboration with IDF International. So I wish to highlight the case of Yahya Sharif Aminu. He's a magician and a follower of the Sufi Islamic beliefs. He was arrested for blasphemy in 2020 and was sentenced to death. In January 21, a higher court in Kano State overturned Sharif Aminu's conviction. Despite overturning that conviction, he remains in prison facing a retrial under laws that violate both the Nigerian constitution and international human rights standards. And with Nigeria being Africa's largest economy and a key UK trade partner, could I ask the Honourable Lady please to raise this with her Cabinet colleagues, the potential economic and business implications for international companies operating in northern Nigeria if the Supreme Court upholds the constitutionality of blasphemy laws, and how this might impact upon investor confidence, our corporate social responsibility commitments and long-term business stability. Thank you so much.
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for that question? He will hopefully know, I'm sure, that the UK government opposes the death penalty in all circumstances, including in the case that he raises. And the right of individuals to express their beliefs and non-beliefs is essential to a free and open society. We have and we will continue to raise these matters with the Nigerian government, and can I thank him for raising them here today.
Before I call the next person, can I just remind members that we will need to finish in the next 15 to 20 minutes, so they could keep their questions short. I'd appreciate it, and so would their colleagues. Joe Morris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The recent news of the loss of 3 bank branches in my constituency further illustrates the crisis facing communities like that in the Tyne Valley of growing and more severe banking deserts. So can we have a debate in government time about the need for cash access, not only for older people, but also for those starting businesses, those making purchase of a house, and those who need to access face-to-face banking services to promote growth in rural areas?
Well, absolutely. Protecting vital banking services is really important for local communities like his. We are accelerating the rollout of at least 350 banking hubs, and over 100 are already open. I think plans were announced at the end of last year to open a banking hub in his constituency, but he raises an incredibly important matter here today.
Josh Dean.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week I had the pleasure of visiting Hertford Regional College's campus in Ware to meet some of their talented hairdressing apprentices and instructors and hear how they're filling jobs with SMEs in our community, and to discuss HRC's apprenticeship offer for my constituents. As we mark National Apprenticeship Week, will the Leader of the House join me in celebrating our apprentices in Hertford and Stortford, and would she allow for a debate in government time on how this government's apprenticeships and skills offer will drive growth and help deliver our plan for change?
To the House.
Well, absolutely. As he can see, I'm very keen on hairdressing apprenticeships in particular. It's one thing that won't be ever be able to done on the internet, so there's a job for life there for people who go down that route. But he's absolutely right. We need to open up more apprenticeship opportunities to more young people, and this week, as we mark Apprenticeship Week, that's why we've announced changes to flexibility on maths and English requirements, which we think will open up far more opportunities for young people like those in his constituency.
Joanna Baxter.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last weekend Renfrewshire Council confirmed a case of H5N1 avian influenza at Castle Semple Loch in Lochwinnock in my constituency. The outbreak's proximity to RSPB Lochwinnock Nature Reserve has raised serious concerns in the local area. Can the Leader of the House confirm what steps the UK Government is taking to engage with the Scottish Government on this matter, and what actions the Government are taking to support conservation organisations and farmers in Scotland in respect of avian flu?
Leader of the House.
Well, I know that avian flu and these outbreaks in recent years is incredibly difficult for bird keepers who are on the front lines of this sort of terrible disease. She will know that disease control is a devolved matter. However, there is an animal disease policy group that coordinates response across the devolved nations and here with the UK government as well. And I will continue to make sure that she's updated on these matters.
Alex Barris-Curtis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to ask the Speaker if we can, the Leader, pardon me, if we can have debate in government time to discuss the importance of sport in the community, particularly when it comes to sustainable community-focused programmes. This is particularly pertinent for my constituency, given the fantastic Kyra Ely Football Club are taking on Connors Quay Nomad Football Club in the quarter-final of the Welsh Cup on Sunday. So would the Leader use her good offices to allocate time for this, and would she join me in wishing Kyra Ely the best for Sunday?
Yeah. Leader of the House.
I will do my best to wish Cara Ely the best in the game that they're playing in this weekend. And he's absolutely right that grassroots sports play such an important role for young people, particularly in and across our communities, in keeping them fit, healthy, team sports, giving them the skills for life that they need. And that's why this government continues to be committed to grassroots sports.
Sonia Kumar.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last weekend I went to see Dudley FC draw 1-1 at their home game against Lichfield City. Unfortunately, that home game wasn't within the constituency. In fact, Dudley FC hasn't had a stadium in the constituency for decades, despite being established since 1888. Can the Leader of the House give government time and a debate to discuss grassroots football and how we bring clubs back, like mine back home where they belong.
Through the House.
Well, can I thank you for raising the issue of Dudley Town Football Club, and I hope that one day they will be back in the constituency of Dudley. She's right to raise these matters. Grassroots sports and football are really important to this government. That's why we're bringing forward the football regulation bill, amongst many other issues. And there are routes to clubs like hers getting funding support to bring the football club home.
Louise Jones.
Speaker. Last week I had the honour of visiting Unston Juniors School in my constituency, and I'd like to pay tribute to the fantastic work of the staff there. I also had the opportunity for some of the children to ask me questions, and there was a range including the environment and other issues, but crucially I was asked what more can we do to support the school in providing healthy eating, and in particular allowing them to have watermelon and strawberries for their lunch.
Well, I would strongly encourage young people of her constituency to have access to watermelon and strawberries for lunch, and how refreshing it is, because I certainly know from my own children that probably wouldn't be the top of their list for things for lunch. So the school in her constituency are obviously doing a great job on the education, healthy eating of the young people in her patch.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. UK sports-supported events generated £373 million in 2023 alone. Luton Hoo in my constituency is bidding to be a venue for the 2031 Ryder Cup. So would the Leader of the House agree to a debate in government time on attracting major international sporting events to the UK as part of supporting our government's growth agenda, attracting local investment, providing good jobs and inspiring pride in local communities?
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely. I mean, England hasn't hosted the Ryder Cup since 2002, and I know that Luton Hoo in her constituency has got a very strong bid to host the Ryder Cup, and I wish them the very best of luck at that. She's absolutely right that big sporting events like this bring a huge amount of regeneration, economic input, jobs, opportunities, as well as giving pride in place for constituents like hers.
Sarah Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tamworth Town Centre is being obliterated by roadworks that started on Monday. Staffordshire County Council has not consulted or informed schools, businesses, residents or the Borough Council properly. A hotel has lost £700